Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network LLC. Educate, enlighten, entertain, and let's not forget mindfulness. Protests. They've been long taking place on our college campuses. At the moment, it's pro Palestinian, and they've been having over the campus across the United States, ignited by the political activism. Some of them have spiraled into violence and police crackdown, but it's not the first time. We have quite a history of violence and police crackdown on protests on college campus. The first one started from Vietnam when there were college demonstrations which turned deadly and the U.S. civil rights protests ended in mass arrests. The circumstances for each one of these protests were different, but the story they carry is all quite familiar. Our young people demanding changes on their campuses or in the world, and their impassioned demonstrations often escalate amid clashes with authorities. Remember China? I bet you don't. At the moment, Colombia is the center of current wave of protests, but we've seen them before, including during the Vietnam War in 1968. Demonstrations led the university to end classified war research and stop military recruitment, among other changes, wrote Rosalind Rosenberg, a professor of history at Barnard College for Barnard magazine. Today's demonstrators also have specific changes, often involving divestment from Israel, citing the death of more than 34,000 Palestinian people who died in Gaza amid Israel's bombardment and ground assault. The military campaign was triggered by Hamas' incursion into southern Israel on October 7th, when about 12,000 people, mostly civilians, were killed and more than 240 people were taken hostage. But as campus authorities react swiftly, citing safety concern and calling in the police to break up encampments, it's unclear if or how the current protests will influence the Israeli Hamas war. USA Today revisited the campuses and also our history about protests on college campuses. And they visited 4 of the campus protests to explain how college protests have become a staple of our American life and often influence the outcomes of political strife. Here's a look at the past and whether they were successful in influencing their causes. In 1960, the University of California, Berkeley, free speech. At the University of California in Berkeley, starting in 1964, students protested the university limits on political activities and free speech during the civil rights movement and Vietnam era. In the wake of McCarthyism, anti-communist sentiments during the 1950s, public universities in California had enacted numerous regulations limiting students' political activities, wrote Karen Achinger for University at the Free Speech Center at Middle Tennessee University. At the University of California and Berkeley, student groups took part in any on and off student groups on or off campus political activities. Those were banned from campus. What happened next was small sit ins and demonstrations that escalated into a series of large scale rallies and protests demanding full constitutional rights on campuses, reads the UC Berkeley website. Nearly 800 students were arrested by local police as a result. The students' protests simultaneously worked in their favor. The university eventually overturned policy that restricted the content of speech or advocacy, according to the college. Today, the movement stands as a symbol of the importance of protecting and preserving free speech and academic freedom, reads their website. In 1970, it was Kent State University in Ohio. The most prolific university protest of the Vietnam War happened at Kent State University in Ohio and Maryland in May 1970. Students started protesting the Vietnam War, the U.S. invasion of Cambodia, and their campus on May 2nd. 2 days later, the National Guard opened fire into a sea of anti war protesters and passerbys. The soldiers killed 4 young people: Allison Cruz, Jeffrey Miller, Sandra Sugar, and William Knox Schroeder, and injured several others with their violence. The impact of the shooting was dramatic, wrote Jerry Lewis and Thomas Hensley in an article for Kent State University. The event, quote, triggered a nationwide student strike that forced hundreds of colleges and universities to close. I remember that. My university was closed. And I was red hot because it took time and extra jobs for me to make money to even go to college that year. So imagine my chagrin when I couldn't go. And while I understood what they were protesting about, I felt like starting my own protests against us poorer kids who had to really work to get into college and was forfeiting, our rights because a bunch of kids got out of hand and they were shot by the National Guard. Neither side was right and neither side was wrong, and the poor people like me were caught in the middle. H.R. Heldman, a top aide to President Richard Nixon, wrote in The Ends of Power, states that the shootings at Kent State began the slide into Watergate, eventually destroying the Nixon administration. Really? I didn't see any politicians being killed that day. Today, the protests and shootings certainly have come to symbolize the deep political and social divisions that sharply divided the country during the Vietnam War era. Jackson State College in Mississippi, racial injustice in 1970. That I also supported. Days after the shooting of Kent State, police opened fire at a college dormitory, Jackson State College in Mississippi, a school with a predominantly Black student population. Black students there were protesting racial injustice, including how they were treated by white drivers speeding on campus, according to the university. Police received a call that Black young people were throwing rocks at white drivers near the campus. The police arrived at the scene and shot hundreds of bullets into Alexandra Hall. According to the FBI report, NPR reported police killed 2 students, Philip Lafayette Gibbs and James Earl Green, and injured 12 others. The college also canceled its graduation due to the killings and unrest. And you kind of wonder, would they have done and acted the same if they had gone on to an all white predominant college? And Kent State, of course, answered that question. At a 2021 commencement ceremony, the university honored 74 of the students who were unable to walk the stage in 1970, NBC reported. At the commencement ceremony, Jackson Mayor Choki Antar Lumumba said police unjustly gunned down two innocent young black men, terrorized and dramatized a community of black students, and committed one of the gravest sins in our city's history. The killings at Jackson State College and Kent State University sparked outrage. College students across the nation protested on their campuses, according to Zen Education Project, a collaboration of historical content from the groups Rethinking Schools and Teaching for Change. I wonder what will happen this year with the present administration going after all the colleges, plus the top 7 schools of both men and women, because they refuse to do what he has demanded. The spring of 1970 saw the first general student strike in the history of the United States. Students from over 400 colleges and universities called off classes to protest the invasion of Cambodia, the Kent State affair, the killing of 2 black students at Jackson State College in Mississippi, and the continuation of the war. Angus Johnston, an adjunct assistant professor at Hustos Community College of the City University of New York and a historian of student activism, said after both events, quote, there was a period of about 30 years or so where it tended to be fairly unlikely that campuses would respond with mass arrests, even in the case of admin building occupations. Another form of popular college campus protest occurred in the 1980s. Students across the country wanted their colleges to cut ties with groups that supported from the South African apartheid. Under apartheid, race restricted every aspect of life for South Africans who were Black, Indian, and colored, a multiracial classification created by the government. The New York Times, for them who doesn't know their history, the Dutch went into Africa and took over. Whites are superior to blacks. That's all that needs to be said as a comment, but it's also historically correct. There are strict limits on where they can live, attend school, work, and travel. Reminds me of the United States. Columbia University was at the center of the movement. Students led by the Coalition for a Free South Africa at Columbia University, quote, blockaded Hamilton Hall, the university administration building, leading to the first successful divestiture campaign at the university. Reads a summary of events from the Zen Education Project. There were less pushbacks for protesters during this time due to, quote, a certain embarrassment among elites in the United States. There was complicity with South Africa's white government, said Daniel Farber, a history professor at the University of Kansas who has studied American activism, reports Vox Media. Columbia University was one of the first colleges to divest from doing business with Africa, and 155 universities followed suit. U.S. Congress also passed the Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act in 1986, which aimed to prevent new trade and investment between the nation and South Africa. I'm sure, comment, that when the current administration gets around to it, they'll get rid of that as well. What is the future of college protests in America? Free speech experts told US Today that students should continue to peacefully protest in open campus spaces to avoid conflicts. Alex Morey, the director of campus rights advocacy for the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, encourages universities to remain neutral in times of unrest and not to call in authorities unless the demonstration turns violent. The national nonprofit defends American rights to free speech and thought. Comment, yes, but for how long? We all know that the authoritarian president of the United States will certainly change that quickly. Peaceful protest is a hallmark of a healthy speech climate on American college campuses, and it has been for decades, whether it's the Berkeley free speech movement or students protesting the Vietnam War era or civil rights, Maury said. Generations of students here felt passionately about certain issues, and the open air places on campuses are great places to support their views. Somebody should have told that. This is a comment over in China. One student stood in front of a Sherman tank in front of Tiananmen Square. And later he was arrested and imprisoned for that. If you want to hear more about this article or have questions, you can contact Kayla, Kayla, Jimenez at KJIMENEC at usatoday.com. Follow her on X at KAYALAJJIMENEZ. Thank you very much for listening this afternoon. You can hear this and view this video podcast all over again at passionworldtalkradio.com / and go down to State of Current Affairs. Click on that. It will take you onto a page where you see a link. It will take you into the belly of the beast of YouTube, and you can see the video there among thousands of others that we have produced during the last 19 years of being a woman-owned, woman-operated internet talk radio station. Want to see us stay online? Please go over to passionworldradio.com / donate and let your voice be heard. This program is brought to you by Ruby AI. Check us out at http:// AIwithlillian.com. It will take you to ruby.ai. There are testimonials and demonstration of how the software Ruby AI works. Sign up for a monthly subscription. You'll be delighted that you finally have taken that first step. Also by Conscious Research Solutions. Check us out over at passionworldtalkradio.com / research made simple blog. There you will find the pain points that you who want to do research will face. Book a 15-minute free consultation with us, either via the calendly.com / passionworldradio or the form below. Provide your name, your email, and what your research question is. Thank you very much for listening and have a great weekend.